And I threw in a couple things so that you knew what day-to-day business was like. At one point in time, we had a phone call from one of the tenants for Satori that they don't have water. Eric's in Grand Rapids. The valve to turn to make the pump down at the far end bring water down to the other end was in Eric's house. Don't ask me how I got in, but I got in. With his permission. We pulled that lever and we had water. This was April of last year. I want you to keep that in mind. April 2008, we had a pump problem. On June 12th, I get the package. It was delivered at 9 o'clock in the morning by Overnight Express, and I raced it to the recording to record it at the Register of Deeds because Satori Corporation was going to be at the courthouse steps at 10 o'clock to foreclose on Jeff and Westbrook Partners. 20 minutes, but we beat it. And I remember when I called Dennis to tell him, I said, I left your development rights in place. All we did was make sure that we could call the first annual meeting and get rolling and start to pay the bills. Throughout that summer, Don Piesky, Don Hickman, and I got an M there. That's bad. Andrea, Lindsay, Dave, Doug, and I can't think of whoever else cut the lawn so we didn't have to come up with the money to pay for service. Bob, man in the back, bought us the lawnmower. We opened a checking account. We transferred the assets from the attorney's trust account because all this time while we're shelling out the money, that $362 every 2 weeks, I'd go knocking on doors. I need money, I need money, I need money. I thought they were going to kill me. There was lots of times they wanted to kill me. I was also collecting dues, and we were putting that in a trust account. So we got the assets from the trust account. It took a while to figure out what bank we wanted because we wanted a good deal for our money, and we began to operate. In August, we held our first annual meeting, and believe it or not, we had enough money in that trust account that we were able to acquire property insurance that following week after the annual meeting. So we were all nicely, safely, and securely insured. We contacted the IRS because we had no information. We didn't know whether we were properly incorporated, not properly incorporated, there was nothing. I guess I can segue here and tell you when we would talk to Carl Schelling, he openly admitted that there was probably commingling of funds and there would be no way to figure out an accounting. When we took over control, the 12 of us were like, it'd be great if we could get an accounting out of Jeff, but that costs money because he didn't have any money, and to get that much was probably going to cost us some trial litigation stuff. But the bottom line is we got what we needed and we moved on, starting at balance. Balance account actually started with $2,000 in it because it was our trust account money. We did whatever we could to get money stabilized and get ourselves organized those first few months. November. I'm going to emphasize that the month of October was a little devastating because one of us had a kidney removed. 2 weeks after surgery, she's out walking the property to figure out what properties have been winterized and what ones haven't, calling banks, mortgage companies, realtors, because God only knows what was going to happen. We tried to locate reasonable rates for snow plowing. That was a hoot, people. That was a hoot. The November board meeting, end of the month, again, less than a month post-surgery. Andrea, Dory, and I were the ones in attendance for that meeting. We had a phone conference with Carrie from Satori Corporation, and we were owed about $13,000, I think, roughly. And we talked to Carrie about, well, if we get rid of all of the past dues, if you guys could just give us about 10 grand, that's going to get us through the winter months so that we don't have to worry about what happens if we have a major snowstorm. Carrie talked to us about trying to talk with Dennis Brooks about trying to get somebody to be a snow removal person or somebody that, basically could assist and do that in lieu of paying some assessments. We left it at that to see what was going to happen. On November 27th, I got an email from Kerry that said basically he'd been given the only authority to give us about $2,500 towards the property taxes. I forgot to tell you, the property taxes hadn't been paid, and in fact had already been foreclosed. And we got the notice, and guess who knows the county treasurer? And told her, red flag that account if anybody comes in to pay that amount. I need to know right away. So we sat and we waited in hopes that by March, they had to be paid in March, that we would either have enough money or Satori would come through for us and give us the $2,500 so we could pay the past dues amount. Okay, that's that. November and December. Oh yeah, at that point in time, we're getting worried about that pump. And again, while I was recuperating, a maintenance man was in my house doing some work, and he knew Mr. Brewer. So he called Mr. Brewer and said, look, you really need to work with Sue on this. So it opened up a doorway, and I spoke with Mr. Brewer. Mr. Brewer has maintained the water pumps and the wells since they were installed. He has every maintenance record on the 10 wells and their associated pumps. And we needed his working with us. And fortunately, he had been given information from Mr. Schelling that we had no money, so don't do any work for us. So, opened that up. Mr. Brewer came over, I let him in, we talked about some things, gave us an estimate, and that's where it laid, because the estimate was $1,800. Okay, then, based on what we heard from Kerry, we went with a month-to-month on the snow removals to give them time to try to find somebody that might be able to do snow removal and save the association some money. So that's why, as much as you were frustrated with how the snow situation went this winter, we paid what we thought we could pay and handle without depleting the funds. So, end of December, the roofs start leaking. And then on December 22nd, we had a massive pipe burst in 4645. I was trying to pack to leave. I can't remember what you were doing. And Don is standing there, the only one with the ability to get into the unit. And the door was frozen shut. It was horrible. And the only way we knew about it was because there was a couple living next door. Were they the Stanfords? Yeah. And they had water. It was a wonderful Christmas. So then, I guess I should say, the roofs really started leaking because I'm in North Carolina, and I get the phone call that Dave and Lindsay's place, which has been leaking since, they moved in.
2006, yeah.
Since they moved in, was just a mess, and it just completely was, you should see their kitchen. I called Kerry to get a status of what Dennis is going to do because we knew he was going out of the country. We didn't get very far with that. Roof leaks continued. We did patchwork. You'll see the totals on the patchwork. If you called me about water in your house, you know that we did patchwork. Snow levels increased. Who expected all that snow? And it was not consistent with what we want for snow removal. It really isn't, but it's all we could